BMW's third generation X3 is a premium mid-sized SUV that's a plusher, more spacious and more powerfully efficient choice than its predecessor, stacking up impressively against prestigiously badged alternatives from Audi, Mercedes, Jaguar and Volvo in this sector. Like its rivals, dynamically targeted almost exclusively towards on-road use, it's another example of just how car-like a model of this kind can be.
You wouldn't, would you? Dramatically change a car that's already a bestseller. So this third generation BMW X3, the Munich maker's entrant in the ever-growing premium mid-sized SUV segment, very much emphasises evolution over revolution when it comes to the alterations made. We had the major changes last time around back in 2010 when BMW transformed the awkward first generation X3 model into a proper smart suited mid-sized SUV fully up to the task of taking on classy rivals from Audi and Mercedes. The previous E83 series Mark I design, originally launched in 2003, had been one of the company's poorer efforts, essentially a re-bodied 3 Series Touring that looked ugly, felt cheap, rode poorly, and only sold a lot because it didn't have much in the way of competition. What buyers really wanted an X3 to be was a slightly shrunken version of the company's luxury X5. So that's what the Bavarians tried to provide with the second generation F25 series version of this car, production for which was moved to the X5's US plant in Spartenburg, South Carolina. The same American factory builds this replacement G01 Series X3 Model 2, launched towards the end of 2017, and like all X-range models, designated by BMW as an SAV or sports activity vehicle to try to differentiate it from less dynamic SUV rivals. As you can see from the styling presided over by Australian Calvin Look, it's been moved a touch up market. Necessarily so, actually, to leave a little more breathing space for the two other only slightly more compact X-Series models that in recent times have been slotted in to sell beneath it, the second generation X1 and that car's sporty derivative, the X2. True, the size of this model is much the same as it was before, but under the skin things are much changed. The previous 3 Series derived architecture now replaced by a more sophisticated design that shares its technology with the more luxury orientated 5 Series model. As part of that, buyers get a whole new level of safety provision and media connectivity, plus cabin quality takes a big leap forward too. When you want an agile driving experience, weight reductions and improvements to the chassis promise to provide it. When you don't, the company's latest autonomous driving tech is supposed to allow you to relax and settle back. And there's also a properly potent M-Performance petrol flagship variant for the first time, the top M40i model, equipped to take the fight to road-burning rivals like Audi's SQ5 and the Mercedes-AMG GLC. It all sounds pretty promising, doesn't it? Time to put this car to the test. Back in 1999, we got a car into test that really shocked us. The first generation BMW X5 changed the way we thought about SUVs, and it did the same in the luxury segment of that market. No 4x4 had ever handled with such poise and precision, and it took rivals years to catch up. But catch up they did, to the point where today it's Porsche, not BMW, who are recognised generally as dynamic masters in the SUV sector. Munich wants to reassert itself, and as part of that, this third generation X3 has been tasked with serving up a more rewarding driving experience than its predecessor. Hence the changes made here. A greater rearward bias for the xDrive 4-wheel drive system, a small but significant 55 kilogram weight saving overall, and the addition to the lineup of the first ever X3 M Performance model, the M40i, a straight-six 360 bhp petrol powerhouse that goes Porsche Macan hunting at the top of the range. Our focus here though is on the more mainstream models, all of which this time around get xDrive 4-wheel drive and a silky smooth 8-speed automatic gearbox. There are two 4-cylinder derivatives, 184 bhp petrol xDrive 20i model that hardly anyone will want, and a 190 bhp xDrive 20D diesel variant that the vast majority of xDrive buyers tend to choose. The other option is the one that we're trying here, the 6-cylinder 3-litre xDrive 30D diesel, which we think hits a very appealing power, performance and efficiency sweet spot in the range, if you can stretch to it, that is. The X3's primary task is to improve on the proposition offered by its two arch rivals, Audi's Q5 and the Mercedes GLC, and right from the off it should indeed feel a slight cut above those competitors if you're one of those people who likes to drive. The suspension is a touch better judged, with a superior compromise between agility and ride quality, which does make it more likely that you'll find yourself pushing on through the corners, at which point you'll notice steering that, although it's not especially feelsome, it has more directness and precision than you'd normally expect from a car of this kind. With the top M Sport trim, you also get performance control torque vectoring, and that lightly brakes the inner rear wheel at speed, improving cornering traction. If you're a real enthusiast, you might also notice a slight rearward bias to the xDrive system that we mentioned. That's a package that, as usual in this segment, is one of those on-demand four-wheel drive setups that powers only two driven wheels, in this case the rear ones, until a loss of traction demands the instant inclusion of torque from the front axle too. Now, it's this rear-driven formula that's a major factor in differentiating this X3 from its X1 and X2 X-Series counterparts, both of which use the simpler, primarily front-driven, Mini-derived UK L2 platform that the Munich maker uses for its more compact designs. This X3, in contrast, comes from more sophisticated stock, borrowing much of its rear-driven architecture from the brand's more upmarket 5 Series model. So, while the X1 and the X3 may look quite similar, if you switch from one to the other, you really will feel at the wheel that you've gone up a class of car. Cruise around in this SUV and the experience provided loses little over a 5 Series in terms of poise and luxury. Plus, of course, there's the added bonus of the more commanding driving position you get with this class of car. Start to throw the X3 around a bit though, and the inevitable limitations of the SUV genre in terms of height and weight start to become apparent. BMW claims that you can improve things by specifying the variable sports steering option, which is supposed to offer more response the more lock you apply. Personally though, we think the advantages that this feature adds to be slight. What will make a difference though is the way that you use the various modes provided by the standard drive performance control system, the switch GIF, which you'll find down here by the gear stick. Now, you might be familiar with this kind of thing by now. It's a setup that allows you to tweak the steering, the throttle, the gear change timings and the stability control system thresholds depending on the operating setting you select. If you ignore drive performance control or you select its most relaxed comfort or efficient Eco Pro settings, and the travelling experience in this car, although very comfortable, is fairly unremarkable. Switch into sport though, and the reaction you get immediately feels keener and more alert. The 6-cylinder models, which get a quicker changing sport version of the auto gearbox with a built-in launch control feature, also get an even more focused Sport Plus setting too. Across the range, to complete the functionality of the DPC system, you can add in the variable damper control package that we would highly recommend, and that enables the various drive performance control settings to also influence ride quality. You'll maybe want some specifics on performance. In the relatively unlikely scenario of you wanting to consider petrol power in your X3, you'll find that the xDrive 20i entry-level variant gets to 62 mph in 8.3 seconds en route to 134 miles an hour. At the other end of the range, the figures for the road-burning M40i flagship model are 4.8 seconds and 155 miles an hour. That's quite enough to rival direct competitors like Audi's SQ5, Porsche's Macan S and the Mercedes AMG GLC 43. As we said though, most buyers will focus on diesel, probably on the volume xDrive 20D derivative, which makes 62 miles an hour from rest in 8 seconds en route to 132 miles an hour. Those are stats improved to 5.8 seconds and 149 miles an hour by this xDrive 30D diesel version, which also boasts an increase in torque from 400 to 620 Newton meters. That facilitates a rise in brake towing capacity from 2 to 2.4 tons, should that be relevant for you. If you are a tower, then you may be among the few X3 buyers who are likely to be interested in off-road traction. Now obviously we're talking muddy car parks and light field tracks here rather than the Serengeti. Actually though, by the mediocre standards of the premium mid-sized SUV class, the X3 doesn't perform too badly off a paved surface. That's thanks to a reasonable 204 millimeters of ride height that facilitates quite decent approach and departure angles and a half-meter fording depth. It's quite interesting to get the car onto a slippery incline and feel it spin a wheel briefly before the clutches divert more power across the axle or to the front wheels, at which point forward progress seamlessly returns. Plus there's hill descent control to ease you down steep slopes. The more efficient transfer case that the xDrive system now uses is borrowed from BMW's 7 Series luxury saloon, and that probably tells you everything you need to know about the kind of terrain it's been developed for. Though the exterior dimensions here are hardly changed over those of the previous model, this third generation X3 has significantly more roadside presence than its predecessor. Now predictably it shares many aesthetic cues with its smaller X1 showroom stablemate, which isn't surprising since both models are the work of the same stylist. That's Australian designer Calvin Look. Now you notice that most of all here at the front, where the now larger three-dimensional kidney grille is much the same as that found on the smaller model and features a hexagonal design for the first time on a BMW X Series design. Flanking it are LED headlamps that, as an option, can feature the BMW Icon LED intelligent adaptive technology that we're trying here. Now lower down, as usual with the brand's cars, there are two different styles of bumper. There's one for the mainstream trim levels, and this more aggressive rendering for the M Sport and M Performance models with these more overt corner air intakes. Avoid base SE spec, and these slim LED fog lamps are standard. In profile, the proportions will be familiar to previous X3 buyers, with this long bonnet and short front overhang emphasising this BMW's classic 50-50 weight distribution between front and rear axles. Roof rails are standard. There's usual firm mid-level styling crease flowing through the door handles. Sleek swage lines lower down give the flanks some shape, and they separate arches that, in tune with the current trend, can house even larger alloy rims this time around. We've got the 19 inches here, but as an option, wheels up to 21 inches in size can be made available. These vents just behind the front wheel arches are only there for show. They do look good though. Move to the rear and you'll find that the changes made over the previous model are even more subtle. The tail lights now feature full LED illumination and 3D styling, while the roof spoiler with its integrated central stoplight is now downward sloping. All engines now get twin tailpipes too. Of course, as usual, what's more important is what you can't see, primarily the fact that the underskin architecture, which in previous X3s was based on a 3 Series, now draws from more upmarket 5 Series drive technology. There's a reason that this car feels more sophisticated than both on the road and in the cabin. So let's take a look at the inside in a little more detail. You're seated in the pleasingly commanding position that you'll want if you've switched into an X Series model from either a 3 or a 5 Series. And for the first time in an X3, you're treated to a properly premium experience behind the wheel here. And now towards the end of its life, the old F25 second generation X3 model's cabin was beginning to lag behind obvious rivals in terms of overall quality. It certainly didn't particularly appeal to owners who are downsizing from a much more luxurious X5. This interior might though. All the materials used here feel great to touch, and the proper leather and metal finishing on this Plusher variant feels very special indeed. True, with some of the controls there is perhaps more of a similarity to lesser BMW models than some well-heeled owners might want, but otherwise the layout's really difficult to fault. Now, we mentioned the newfound close relationship this third generation model has now with the BMW 5 Series model. Well, inside you really feel that, perhaps most notably with the use this X3 now makes of the cutting edge media connectivity systems from that car. Specifically, this means the 10.25 inch professional multimedia setup, which is either standard or optional depending on the variant you've chosen. Base models get a much less sophisticated setup with a 6.5 inch screen. Really like the simple, intuitive way this preferable professional system works though, with menus that can be customized to your taste. In its standard form, the monitor is divided into simple connected drive, navigation, media, radio, my vehicle, communications and notification segments. The connected drive menu is particularly informative. It delivers a range of downloadable apps and also access to BMW's suite of online services. And those are designed to enhance your journey by sending you up-to-date information while you're at the wheel. So everything from weather and latest news to a rainfall radar and an online search system. Astonishingly though, on a car of this price, Apple CarPlay smartphone mirroring connectivity costs extra. Other options include a concierge service and an online entertainment package that will give you direct access to millions of music tracks. It's also possible to connect in Microsoft Exchange 365 to your car so you can control your inbox and sync your calendar. As usual, you can operate the whole thing either by voice or by twisting the usual iDrive controller down here by the gear stick. Plus there are two further control options this time around. One is standard, touchscreen interface for the central dash display, and another is available at extra cost, a gesture control feature that recognises up to 6 gestures via a 3D sensor at the base of the control display. So a twirl of your outstretched finger will vary the volume control, while a jab towards the screen will allow you to answer a call. Now the idea is that these kinds of gestures can be performed without taking your eyes off the road. In practice though, we found the sensor's response frustratingly patchy unless exactly the right kind of motions performed, and that often leaves you in a situation where you're doing nothing more than making what appear to be obscene gestures at other road users. We've no issues with the driving position though, unless you count the fact that, rather meanly, BMW charges extra for seat lumbar support on mainstream models. These chairs do feature great side support as standard though, and they position you perfectly in front of a 3-spoke wheel that, in this case, is of the grippy, thick-trimmed M Sport variety. That's a design we particularly like. Through it, you'll be viewing one of 3 different instrument binnacle layouts, and that depends on the variant you've chosen. Base models get conventional gauges, but as an option you can replace those with virtual dials that come as part of the TFT digital cockpit screen that's fitted as standard on the top M40i variant. M Sport trim models like this one get this compromise semi-digital cockpit arrangement. Whatever layout you end up with, it won't be really necessary to look at it very much if you've gone for the optional head-up display that we've been trying here. It's 75% larger than it is on smaller BMWs, so there's space for it to be all the more informative as a result. Little stylistic details really make a cabin like this. This optional Sensotec stitched dashboard covering, for example, the subtle ambient lighting that can bathe the cabin in shades of green, yellow, orange, blue, lilac or white, and the embossed X badges are concealed on the door cards. There's more X branding at the base of the centre stack here, just above this smart covered cubby ahead of the gear stick. This features a beautifully damped sliding top that glides back to reveal twin cup holders, 12-volt and USB ports, and a compartment for your phone that can incorporate a useful optional wireless charging mat. Now there's another covered storage area between the seats here, and that incorporates a further USB point, and there's a pull-out cubby by the driver's knee. We're a little disappointed by the size of the glove box and by the fact that there's no overhead compartment for your sunglasses, but the door pockets are reasonably shaped and they incorporate bottle holders. I'll also make the point that all-round visibility is great thanks to the deep window line and to the thin pillars, and that's, yes, even if you're looking rearwards, although BMW has fitted a standard rear view camera and parking sensors on all models just to make sure. Time to take a seat in the back. Now, I mentioned at the beginning the sizing of this third generation X3 model wasn't much different to that of its predecessor, but every little helps, and the extra 51mm of length that this G01 series model enjoys over its F25 predecessor ought to make a difference in the rear, even though it's only translated into 5mm of extra wheelbase length. So let's see. It does, by more than you'd think actually, if you just come from reading those stats. A 6-footer will be able to sit comfortably behind a driver of similar size, which is about as much as you can ask of a mid-sized SUV of this sort. Even the centre perch isn't as uncomfortable as you find it to be in most obvious rivals, although the occupant concerned will have to negotiate this rather prominent centre transmission tunnel. Now, where BMW has missed a trick though is in failing to provide, even as an option, the sliding rear bench that you'll find in its Audi Q5 arch rival, which is odd because you can have that feature on the company's cheaper X1 model. There is seat backrest reclining functionality, but you do have to pay extra for that. Otherwise, irritations here are few. Some might question BMW's decision to provide only a single USB socket as a means for rear passengers to charge their various electronic devices, and a few parents might wish that an ISOFIX charge seat mount was provided for the middle seat as well as the two outer ones. Otherwise, there's really precious little to criticise here. A smart set of ventilation controls are provided, plus there are seat back nets and lidded cup holders in this fold-down centre armrest. In addition, if you pay extra for the panoramic glass roof we have fitted here, the otherwise rather dark cabin can be flooded with a welcome burst of sunlight. Let's take a look out back. First impressions are encouraging. For a start, you get an electrically operated tailgate as standard. This one is embellished with an optional comfort access feature that allows you to raise it by waving your foot beneath the bumper if you're approaching the car key in pocket laden down with bags. Once the powered hatch rises, you're provided with 550 litres of capacity. Now that is the same as before, and also, surely not coincidentally, it's the same as you get in a rival Audi Q5 or Mercedes GLC model. To give you some context, it's 55 litres more than you get in BMW's 3 Series Touring Estate and 100 litres less than you'd get in the larger X5 model. Pull up this floor panel, which rises on a beautifully damped gas strut, and you'll find a useful concealed compartment. That's provided courtesy of the fact that BMW doesn't supply any sort of spare wheel, just a fiddly tyre repair kit. And that's something we disapprove of on any kind of SUV or crossover class vehicle. If you can avoid entry-level trim, you'll get standard run-flat tyres, and we'd want those at the very least. In terms of practicality, there is a 12-volt socket, there's a couple of pull-out bag hooks, the usual tie-down points, a left-hand tensioner strap and a left-hand netted storage area. Need more room? Well, if the item in question is merely long and thin, like a set of skis for example, it may suffice merely to flatten the middle part of this standard 40-20-40 split folding rear backrest. If though you really need to supersize the space, then it's obviously a case of pushing forward the rear bench. Now if you have paid extra for the reclining back seat, that process is neatly activated by these cargo sidewall catches, and once they've been pulled, a 1600 litre cargo area is revealed. Now that's a 100 litre improvement both on the previous version of this car and on a comparable 3 Series Touring Estate. There is no option to further extend this space by specifying a fold flat front passenger seat, but the area you do get is usefully flat and square. X3 pricing sits in the £38,000 to £50,000 bracket, and all models come only with xDrive four-wheel drive and automatic transmission. As usual, almost all buyers will opt for a diesel, and understandably so, given that there are only a couple of petrol options, neither of them in much demand. One is the rare, expensive, flagship high-performance M40i, while the other is the base xDrive 20i 2-litre variant that costs under £1,000 less than the xDrive 20D diesel that over 80% of customers choose. Of the remaining sales, 15% will be accounted for by the six-cylinder xDrive 30D diesel model we're trying here, which demands a £3,500 premium over its four-cylinder black pump fuel counterpart. Now, before we get to how all that stacks up as a value proposition in the mid-sized SUV segment, let's give you some perspective on how this car slots into BMW's own lineup. Now, the premium to upgrade yourself into an X3 from a comparable X1 with automatic transmission and the same trim and engine is just over £6,500. Alternatively, and perhaps more relevantly, you might be looking at an xDrive version of the company's 3 Series Touring Estate as an option. Well, the premium to go from one of those into an equivalent X3 is just over £2,500. With that said though, you'll want to know how the X3's pricing stacks up against premium branded mid-size SUVs from rival manufacturers. Let's see, we're going to use the 190 bhp xDrive 20D diesel model as a comparison benchmark because, as we just said, that's the variant that almost all X3 buyers will be looking at. Now, it's not coincidental that the budget that BMW requires for this derivative is almost exactly the same as you'll need for its two closest Teutonic competitors, Audi's Q5 2-litre TDI and the Mercedes GLC 220D. In all three cases, the ownership stats are very similar, so the final decision will really come down to personal preference. The German brands, though, are these days no longer having things all their own way in this segment. Volvo's second-generation XC60 offers an alternative appealing choice that will save you a fraction over an X3. So will something like Alfa Romeo's Stelvio. In both cases, though, the cars in question struggle to match this BMW's residual values, and that could be crucial for business buyers. A better choice in this regard is Jaguar's F-Pace, which in 2-litre diesel, 180 PS, all-wheel drive auto form is priced almost identically to a base diesel X3, although it is slightly less efficient to run. Plus, of course, there are a variety of Land Rover products, although none of them seem quite as precisely directed at this BMW as the F-Pace is. The model that you'd expect would have been groomed for this role, the Range Rover Velar, is certainly very appealing, but it costs nearly £6,000 more than this X3 in comparable D180 all-wheel drive form. That's a big difference. Otherwise, if you want something with a Land Rover badge, you'll be looking at TD4 180 versions of the Discovery Sport or the Range Rover Evoque. Now, both would save you around £3,000 over a diesel X3, but we think the 7-seat Disco Sport is aimed at a slightly different kind of buyer, while the Evoque is a slightly smaller car that BMW would probably argue is better matched by the upper spec versions of their X1 model. The same applies to a Lexus NX, although that is an interesting alternative if you prefer the idea of petrol-electric hybrid power to diesel. The top M40i version of this BMW, of course, has its own distinct rivals. In the old second-generation X3 range, the flagship performance variant used to feature diesel power rather than the 3-litre six-cylinder petrol unit that the Munich maker has inserted into the top version of this third-generation model. With 360 bhp on tap, the M40i is equipped to go head-to-head with the Audi SQ5, the Mercedes-AMG GLC 43 4MATIC and the Porsche Macan S, which all offer much the same kind of performance for much the same kind of money. If you are prepared to sacrifice a bit of efficiency, adding around £3,000 to an M40i budget will also buy you a Jaguar F-Pace S with a supercharged 3-litre V6 engine. As for a comparable Land Rover product, well, there's only the Range Rover Velar R-Dynamic HSE P380, which manages to be slower and thirstier than an M40i, while costing nearly £20,000 more. So, not tempting. Our focus here though is on mainstream X3 motoring, and if having done your homework and having looked at a few alternatives you conclude that it is this BMW that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Munich maker has been when it comes to that standard specification. So let's take a look at that now. Even entry-level SE spec gives you plenty. To be specific, you get 18-inch V-spoke alloy wheels. Those were 17 inches previously at this level, plus roof rails, a powered tailgate, front and rear park distance control parking sensors, auto headlamps and wipers, and full LED technology for the headlights on the tail lamps. Inside, buyers now get softer Vernasca leather upholstery, heated front sport seats, leather-stitched sport multifunction steering wheel, 3-zone climate control, ambient lighting, cruise control, an anti-dazzle rear view mirror, a reversing camera and trip computer, as well as BMW's drive performance control setup that enables you to tweak the steering and the throttle response to suit your mood. Annoyingly, a space over spare wheel is only optional, but you do get run flat tyres as standard if you can stretch beyond this SE level of trim. You want to know about infotainment too. All X3 models come with the usual BMW iDrive system that in standard form features a 6.5-inch colour screen, Bluetooth with audio streaming, navigation and a decent quality 6-speaker DAB stereo. Plus you get a full suite of BMW connected drive services, including teleservices and real-time traffic information, along with the brand suite of online services too that give you access to things like news reports, weather forecasts, and a whole range of BMW apps. In addition, the system will even read out text messages to you. Talking of being connected, all X3 buyers will be offered use of a clever BMW connected app that can learn your mobility routines, read your calendar, and even prompt you when to leave for scheduled journeys. It'll get familiar with your most frequently travelled routes and will memorise them as future destinations. Plus, the app can help you to find your car if you've forgotten where you parked it, and it can remotely lock or unlock the doors too. If your X3 budget has to stay within reasonable bounds, but you want a slightly sportier look and feel, then your dealer will suggest you find the £900 premium necessary to get mid-level X-Line trim. Now that extra cash gets you smarter, larger, ferric grey trimmed 19-inch alloy wheels, LED front fog lamps, front sports seats, a bit of extra exterior silver trimming, contrast stitching for the leather upholstery, and the convenience of a slightly larger fuel tank. If budget permits though, you'll probably want to stretch up to the properly dynamic M Sport spec that so many X3 customers end up choosing. It's what you've got here. Is it worth upgrading to it? Well, it's certainly tempting. The extra cash gets you bi-colour ferric grey M double spoke 19-inch alloy wheels, a subtle M aerodynamic body styling kit with high gloss shadow line exterior trim, plus further black high gloss finishing for the roof rails and the front grille slats. Driving dynamics, well, they're improved courtesy of firmer M Sport suspension and performance control torque vectoring, which lightly brakes the inner rear wheel at speed through tight turns, maximising cornering traction. Inside, the cabin gets bespoke M Sport trimming, a semi-digital instrument display, and a lovely M Sport multifunction leather steering wheel. Plus you get the upgraded BMW Professional Media Package that's optional on the lesser models and comes with a larger centre dash 10.25-inch screen that includes extra elements like online entertainment. That's a feature that allows you to listen to radio stations all around the world. As for the top M40i high-performance V6 petrol variant, well, it's recognisable by its dual quadrilateral black chrome finished exhaust and a unique cerium grey finishing for the mirror caps and the front grille slats. Brand loyalists will also note the bi-colour orbit grey 20-inch M double-spoke wheels, which feature special calipers designating the upgraded M Sport braking system. Variable sport steering, an anthracite headliner and powered seat adjustment also come included. Plus, M40i buyers also get a virtual screen digital cockpit instrument cluster and BMW Icon adaptive LED headlights that feature a distinctive eyebrow style graphic. They're paired with LED front indicators and they include beams that turn with the road and dip themselves in the face of oncoming traffic. Those LED icon headlamps are available at extra cost on other models, either separately or as part of a visibility package that also includes high beam assistant to automatically dip the headlights at night. Now that's just one element in a lengthy options list that allows you to really go to town on embellishing your X3 should the funds to do so permit. For us, the most important feature to start with in that box ticking process is variable damper control. That's basically an adaptive suspension package that's there to really complete the functionality of the standard drive performance control system we mentioned before. Now, VDC works through that setup's various modes, so you can change the ride of your X3 to suit the way that you want to drive. And it's a particularly essential option on the M Sport trim variants, which otherwise has a rather over-firm springing. Now that firm passive M Sport suspension is available as a standalone option on other variants, but we would advise against it. You might well also want to avail yourself of the choicest elements of technology lately added to the X3 lineup, things like the achingly clever BMW display key with its built-in colour screen. And this allows you to check whether you've closed the doors, when a service is due, and how much fuel you've got. Plus, if you paid extra for the auxiliary heating system, the display key will give you remote control of the ventilation system. So for example, you can warm the car up or cool it down while you're having your breakfast. Another option you might want to consider if you have a variant that is fitted with the upgraded professional media system is gesture control. That's a feature that allows you to activate many cabin features with a mere waft of your hand. In addition, it'll be very nice to have 4 other high-tech additions. There is what BMW calls enhanced Bluetooth with wireless charging. That's a feature that recharges your smartphone when you place it in the tray just ahead of the gear lever. With that in place, you'll be able to make more use of the optional Wi-Fi hotspot package, and that will deliver a high-speed LTE internet connection for up to 10 devices. We would also be tempted by the now much improved head-up display and the digital cockpit virtual screen instrument cluster we mentioned earlier. All of the tech features just mentioned, the display key, the gesture control, the wireless charging, the Wi-Fi hotspot, the head-up display and the digital cockpit are available as individual options, or they can come together as part of an optional technology package. Beyond technology upgrades, there are various extra media connectivity options you can add to, and if you're into these, then you'll want to make sure that the X3 variant you've chosen is going to come fitted with the more sophisticated professional media system with its larger and more personalisable 10.25-inch colour screen. This setup also includes a useful and very unique on-street parking information feature, which works in 9 key UK cities and can provide predictions on the probability of a free parking space being available on streets in city centres. As I said earlier, the professional media package is standard on M Sport and M Performance variants, and you can pay extra for it if you have a lesser SE or X-Line derivative. Either way though, a whole fresh era of media connectivity awaits X3 buyers this time around. Now unfortunately, most of these features cost extra, including rather unforgivably on a car of this price, the Apple CarPlay smartphone mirroring system. The Android Auto setup isn't available at all. At least you can add Apple CarPlay in relatively cheaply, and unusually the connection works without any cables. If you want to go further, a good starting point is the remote services package, which allows you to control many aspects of your car's operation via your smartphone. You might also want a 3-year subscription to BMW's concierge service that at the press of a button will give you direct access to an operator who will be able to answer almost any question about your journey as you drive. Now, to be honest, we could do without that, but we would be very tempted by the optional online entertainment package. Now that will give you direct access to millions of music tracks from either Deezer or Napster without the need for a mobile or an MP3 device in the car. And now as part of this, you can access your own music via cloud-based services. So for example, you could create a playlist at home and then have it available to stream in your car. Business buyers will also want to consider the optional Microsoft Office Exchange 365 connectivity that in-car will allow them to control emails in their inbox and sync their online calendar. Finally, if you really want to push the boat out, other options include a TV tuner and a couple of available audio upgrades, either the BMW Advanced Loudspeaker System or the full house Harman Kardon setup. As for optional driving aids, well, we mentioned the variable damper control earlier. On lower order models, you might additionally want to add the variable sport steering system and the M Sport braking package. Oh, and perhaps also that performance control feature that we mentioned earlier for additional cornering traction. If you think that you or your partner might struggle with slotting this SUV into tight spaces, you could consider the parking assistance system, which will automatically do that for you. You can also go further and get the Parking Assistance Plus package, which embellishes that setup with a 3D surround view camera system that'll also be really useful when you're driving off-road. In addition, if you do a lot of highway mileage, you might also want to consider the active cruise control with stop and go function package that automatically regulates your speed on the highway, if necessary, bringing you to a complete stop and then starting you off again if you come across a tailback. Want to add a touch of luxury to your X3? Well, then you'll want the premium package that gives you a panoramic glass roof along with powered seat adjustment and lumbar support for the front seats. Pay more and those front chairs can feature cooled ventilation. Then there's the option of super soft merino leather 2, which comes extended onto the dashboard and the doors. In winter, heating for the rear seats and the steering wheel would be very nice to have. While for the summer, sun protection glass would be ideal. The practical extras you'll need are much as they were before. Many X3 buyers pay extra for comfort access. It allows you to open the tailgate by waving your foot beneath the bumper. Plus, many of them also pay more for extra cost extended storage that includes an additional front seat stowage area, an extra 12-volt socket, and nets for the boot and the front seat backs. Both of these things come included if you go for the popular comfort package, and that also includes adjustable rear seat backrests and boot levers for flattening them, power folding mirrors and acoustic glazing, which can also be specified to extend to the front side windows too. Other extras that fall into the practical category include an electrically deployable tow bar, sun blinds for the rear windows, a luggage compartment separating net, BMW's optional Trackstar stolen vehicle tracking system, and the usual racks for roof boxes, skis, bikes and snowboards. Plus, as we mentioned earlier, on a base SE spec model, you're going to have to pay extra for either a space saver spare wheel or run flat tyres if you don't want to be stuck by the side of the road fiddling with a tyre mobility kit the next time you have a puncture. On to aesthetics. Now, if you don't want your car's paintwork finished in the standard Alpine white or jet black solid shades, you're going to have to pay more for one of the extra cost metallic colours. We've got the carbon black finish here. There is also a more exclusive sunstone metallic BMW individual colour available if you want your X3 to look particularly unique. Now, if you have a base SE spec car and you like the pricier X-Line variant's satin aluminium exterior finishing, you can add that as an option. And for both SE and X-Line customers who want an M Sport look without an M Sport price tag, there's optional high gloss Shadowline exterior trim too. To complete the effect, there's a bespoke selection of alloy wheels that vary from 18 to 21 inches in size. Now you want to get the look of the interior right too. The basic cabin trimming options give you the chance to add inlays in various aluminium, piano black or wood finishes. The wood inlays are especially nice, particularly the Fine Line Cove package, which features gorgeous open poured timber that's simply lovely to run your fingers across. This particular car's also got a lovely optional Sensitech finish for the instrument binnacle. BMW individual door sill finishes will be nice, and you can have a galvanic embellisher for the controls. Safety is, as you'd expect from BMW, well accounted for, hence this car's full house 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating. You'd expect the basics: twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus front and rear ISOFIX child seat fastenings, and the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control, primarily DSC Plus stability control and DTC traction control. There's plenty of braking peace of mind too, with the ABS system supplemented by faded compensation, CBC, cornering brake control, and a neat brake drying system that keeps the brake discs free of moisture in wet weather. Panic stops are aided by a brake assist system, and they're advertised to following motorists by dynamic brake lights that flash a bright warning. You also get a multi-collision braking function that, in the event of an impact, will keep brake pressure applied until you come to a complete stop. We should also mention that all variants get what BMW calls an active guard system. That's based around forward collision warning technology. At over 30 miles an hour, the vehicle scans the road ahead for potential accident hazards, and if one's detected, you'll be warned and the brakes will be preconditioned for, well, maximum effectiveness. Now, should you be travelling at under 30 miles an hour and you're not responding to a detected hazard, the brakes will automatically be applied, and that will reduce the severity of any resulting accident and hopefully alleviate it altogether. Other neat safety features fitted as standard across the range include an alertness assistant that monitors you for signs of drowsiness, a trailer stabilisation function which will stop trailer sway if you have a trailer fitted, and hill start assistant to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Best of all though, we think, is the BMW emergency call with teleservices system, which in an accident can automatically alert the emergency services. Now, this system not only gives them your exact GPS location, but also provides recovery personnel with information on your speed at point of impact, how hard the seat belts were pulled, how many airbags burst, and so on. If you were to have a crash, it would all mean not only that the emergency teams would know exactly where you were, but also that they would arrive on the scene more prepared and more ready to get you to safety than they could ever otherwise be. That's a potentially life-saving difference. That setup has now been further improved to also automatically activate after low-speed collisions, which are below the threshold for airbag deployment, immediately after the impact, flashing up an iDrive screen message offering to contact BMW's Accident Assistance Service directly. Want to go further? Well, a key option is what BMW calls its driving assistant pack, which gives you a whole range of extra camera-based safety features. These include approach control warning to tell you when you're getting too close to the car in front. Then there's lane change warning that works on the move to stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake when there's a vehicle in your blind spot. You may be familiar with lane departure warning. Now, that will stop dozy drivers from veering over the lane delineating lines on the highway. And perhaps you've also come across something like this X3's cross traffic warning rear feature. Now, that will alert you to oncoming vehicles when you're reversing out of a parking space. Plus, the driving assistance pack also includes a system that warns you of impending rear end accidents. It will flash the hazard warning lights to any following driver that's about to crash into you, while simultaneously tightening the seat belts and closing the windows to ensure that you're as protected as you can be should a collision take place. If you want more, an additional Driving Assistance Plus pack gives you all those Driving Assistant Pack features, plus 8 other camera-driven elements, headlined by that active cruise control with stop and go function package we mentioned earlier. And now the other pack features include cross traffic warning front, which alerts you to oncoming vehicles if you're coming frontwards out of a parking space or you're trying to edge out of a junction and you can't completely see the traffic coming at you from either side. Plus, there's also crossroad warning, which alerts you to traffic coming at you from the sides at a crossroads. Now, as the name suggests, wrong way warning will make an enormous fuss if you completely forget yourself and you end up going the wrong way down a one-way street. And highway-orientated driving assistance plus pack aids include a lane change assistant. There's also a lane keeping assistant with active side collision protection and a steering and lane control assistant, all of which use light steering intervention to keep you where you should be on the road and away from other vehicles, and which together give this car a limited level of autonomous driving capability. Plus, there's also an evasion aid, and that gives you extra steering assistance in critical situations where it's still possible to avoid an accident. So, say for example, someone suddenly pulls out in front of you, or you suddenly have to make a really dramatic lane change to avoid slow-moving traffic. It's all very reassuring. There's no secret behind the way that premium German brands manage to achieve such exemplary efficiency returns. New model development is characterized by an unyielding emphasis on cutting-edge engine technology, weight reduction and slippery aerodynamics, all of which are very much in evidence here. Having said all that though, a few caveats to start. You don't get the relatively lightweight Mini-derived platform that helps the X1 in this regard, or the magnesium and aluminium-rich chassis that trims so much weight off BMW's comparable 5 Series model. As a result, the X3's returns are some way off those of these designs, which might make business buyers pause for thought in trading from one to the other. Having said all of that though, we should credit this Munich maker with a decent improvement this time around. At the launch of the old second generation X3 model, the volume 2-litre diesel variant managed 50.4 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 149 grams per kilometre of CO2. Today, with basically the same engine, the Mark III version can manage up to 56.5 miles per gallon and 132 grams per kilometre, despite all the more sophisticated equipment that buyers now expect it to carry about. To explain that improvement, BMW points to a weight reduction of up to 55 kilos for this third generation car, and to its Blue Performance engine technology, which uses a particulate filter, oxidation and nitrogen oxide absorption catalysts, plus an SCR catalytic converter with AdBlue injection. Class-leadingly slippery aerodynamics help too, the drag factor having been improved from 0.36 to 0.29 CD, with detail area improvements including air curtains across the front wheels, a rear spoiler with sculpted end plates, additional underbody cladding and active radiator grille vanes. Plus, significant efficiency gains have been made with the intelligent four-wheel drive setup in comparison to the previous X3 model's X-Drive setup. Now that's due to lighter components and a clever electro-hydraulic multiplate clutch that's cut torque losses down by 30%. Now, as usual with a car of this kind, this is a part-time 4x4 setup that keeps you rear-driven most of the time to save energy and fuel, and only connects in the front wheels when a lack of traction demands it. So far so good, and when you add to all of this the usual benefits of BMW's clever efficient dynamics technology, well, you have the potential to enjoy luxury SUV motoring, yet still get a reasonably frugal set of running cost returns. The elements in the Efficient Dynamics package are these days copied by pretty much every other manufacturer in the segment, but the way that the Munich makers put them all together really seems to have hit the efficiency sweet spot. So we're talking here of things like on-demand use of ancillary units, electric power steering, low rolling resistance tyres, brake energy regeneration, and an auto start-stop system to cut the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights, for example. The Steptronic auto transmission also includes a coasting function that disconnects the engine at cruising speeds until you need it. Of course, the driver has to play his or her part, so there's an optimum gear shift indicator on the dash and an Eco Pro mode that you can select in the Drive Performance Control System, which will focus all the car systems on ultimate frugality. The extra economy that's created in that Eco Pro setting, BMW reckons it could be up to 20%, is fed back to the driver with an in-car display showing the additional number of miles achieved. Plus, there's an Eco Pro route option in the navigation system, which will pilot your journey in the most efficient manner. In the My Vehicle Technology in Action part of the iDrive screen, you can also find a driving style analysis feature that rates your driving based on two criteria, anticipation and acceleration. And you'll be able to monitor just how far your efforts towards frugality have taken you in a separate efficient dynamic screen that graphically shows you the economy figures you've achieved. And the potential end results if you use all these systems and achieve a high standard of day-to-day operating efficiency? Well, we've already talked about the Volume xDrive 20D variant. Now here we're trying the alternative 6-cylinder xDrive 30D diesel model, for which the figures are up to 49.6 miles per gallon and up to 149 grams per kilometre. That's providing you don't go for one of the really large wheel rim sizes. A switch to petrol power will see the xDrive 20i variant managing up to 39.8 mpg and 163 grams per kilometre, while the flagship M40i delivers up to 34.4 miles per gallon and 188 grams per kilometre. What else? Well, as usual with the BMW, there's a condition-based service indicator on the dash which advises you when your car needs a garage visit. Now you can check all of this using menus on the iDrive Centre Dash display, and the car will give you 4 weeks notice of when a check-up's needed, so you'll have plenty of time to book it. Less familiar to some buyers will be the clever teleservices feature that comes as part of the BMW Connected Drive services that you can access through the iDrive infotainment system. Via this, before each service appointment is due, your X3 can automatically put in a teleservices call to your nominated BMW service centre, and that's complete with detailed information on vehicle condition. You'll then get a call to arrange a service appointment, and that's something that you will already have budgeted for if at the point of original purchase you opted for one of the two fixed cost service inclusive or service inclusive plus packages, which cover you for 5 years or 50,000 miles. With these, after a one-off payment, you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that all normal work on the car has been paid for during that period, and that includes items like oil, spark plugs and filters. What else might you need to know? Or depreciation. Well, that'll be on a par with rival Audi Q5 and Mercedes GLC models, so in other words, pretty strong. Onto the warranty package. Now, BMW offers a warranty that lasts for 3 years, and that's no matter how many miles you complete. As for insurance groups, well, you're looking at Group 28E for the xDrive 20i, or Group 29 for the M Sport version, or Group 29 for the xDrive 20D. Again, the M Sport variant is one group higher. All versions of this 6-cylinder xDrive 30D are pitched at Group 40, which does seem a bit unfair because that's the same rating that's applied to the fire-breathing flagship M40i petrol model. BMW has had a lot to do with the rise in popularity of mid-sized premium SUVs, having sold over 1.5 million of them since the X3 was first launched, pioneering this segment back in 2003. Rivals have grabbed the headlines since, but with this third generation model, the Bavarians are out to redefine what a car of this kind should be. In many ways, this Mark III model does just that. Yes, it's true that it doesn't offer much that's radically different to what we've seen before in this class, but everything it does do is so complete and polished that it's hard not to admire the end result. There's certainly no doubt that it's an immeasurable improvement over the Mark II version in every possible way. It feels more upmarket, it rides impressively, and thank goodness, on tarmac, it drives just as a BMW of this kind should. Now that is important because the previous generation version didn't really differentiate itself very much from obvious rivals in this regard. Probably more significant though is that the X3 now has the luxury demeanour it lacked before, both in terms of its street-side presence and its classy cabin. It really is now the junior X5 we were always promised, and quite a number of owners of that larger model might well be tempted to downsize into this one. It's also good enough to drive to ensure that upsizing 3 Series drivers won't feel shortchanged. Of course, no BMW X model will take you very far off-road, and this one certainly can't, but it doesn't deliver that kind of capability because it doesn't need to. In summary then, we think that buyers in this sector who can afford the asking price should find that this X3 adds up very nicely indeed. A vehicle this good ought to speak for itself. Try one and we think you'll find that it does.